And we are live for Thanksgiving football week 13. How we doing, everyone? It is the best day of the year. It does not get better than this. We got 3 football games. We got amazing food and lots of family. It is undoubtedly my favorite holiday of the year. And we got 3 great football games on today. We got another football game on tomorrow, a Black Friday game between the Chiefs and the Raiders. Today, we kick off with the Lions and the Bears in Detroit, in the Dome. The next game after that, we got the Giants in Dallas. We got a true banger of a Thursday football game there between Drew Lock and Cooper Rush. And then tonight, I would say probably the best game of the day. Maybe this Bears Lions game ends up being it, but the Dolphins go to Green Bay playing in cold weather in that game. We're going to talk through the weather a bit. Weatherman Sam's got you, of course, for the night game today. Then we got a pretty fun game tomorrow afternoon. Starts at 3 p.m. Eastern, that game. Raiders versus the Chiefs. We're going to talk through all 4 of those games in detail on this live stream today. I'll be live for like the next hour and a half. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Truly, truly thankful for all of you. Seriously, everyone that tunes into these lives all year, everyone that's tuning in on Thanksgiving today, everyone who helps me make this a reality. This live streaming I do every single week, this job that I get to have around fantasy football and sports betting, a true dream come true for me. I'm incredibly thankful. Do not take a single day for granted. All right, we're going to get to a lot of difficult start sits today. I mean, there's a lot of difficult start sits this week. There are no bye weeks this week in week 13, which really does create a very difficult start sit environment. First week with no buys, I think since week 3 or week 4 of the season. We had the bye apocalypse last week too. So a lot of difficult start sits to talk through in week 13. And we're going to really, really focus as much as possible on the games today and the game tomorrow, because I'll be live Sunday morning, like usual, on Sunday. All right, so let's go game by game here to start. We're going to start with the first game of the day, kicking off in just about 3 hours. We got the Chicago Bears traveling to Detroit. Let's start with Chicago here. Let me start with the Bears here. So I actually like the Bears passing attack a decent amount today. I think that the Bears also, by the way, keep this game pretty close. They're 10-point underdogs in this game. Over 90% of the money and the bets are on the Lions in this game, which is understandable. The Lions have been steamrolling. Caleb Williams, though, and the Lions, they haven't allowed a good fantasy football quarterback performance since week 8 against Mason Rudolph, who happened to score a rushing touchdown in that game to get him over 20 fantasy points. The only game before that we've seen a quarterback over 20 points was Geno Smith back in week 4. Those are the only 2 QBs to go over 20 points versus the Lions. The Lions defense has not been a great matchup for quarterbacks this season. They're allowing 17.6 points per game. That's 8th fewest in the NFL. So I'm a tiny bit nervous for Caleb Williams in fantasy. I don't think Caleb Williams is a must start in fantasy. Obviously, I don't think too many people are forcing Caleb Williams into their starting lineup, but it's notable that Caleb Williams is arguably coming off his best game as a pro. Last week was arguably Caleb Williams' best game. It's possible we see that momentum keep up. He was the QB4 last week, 340 passing yards, 2 TDs, ran for 33 yards as well. He had a couple incredible plays in this game, and I really do feel like the Bears' offense is built to play against this Lions defense, because where the Lions have struggled this season is stopping wide receivers. They're 4th best against running backs this year in terms of fantasy points allowed. They're the number 1 defense versus tight ends this season. They're the 8th best versus quarterbacks, but they're the 3rd worst versus wide receivers this season. And on paper, heading into the season, I mean, there was a very good argument that the Bears had the best wide receiver trio in the league. Really hasn't come to life for the most part this season. But I still think this is one of the better wide receiver trios in the league. I still believe Rome Odunze is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. So yeah, I'm definitely in on the Bears receivers today. I think DJ Moore is a great start. DJ Moore coming off one of his best games of the season. Really, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen coming off two of their best games of the season. 7 for 106 and a touchdown last week for Keenan. He was the wide receiver. For DJ Moore, he was the wide receiver 4 last week. That was the highest he's ranked in any given week It was his second best fantasy performance. He's now had at least 13 in back-to-back games, but the target share was only at 15%, but he still has at least 6 targets in 4 straight. DJ Moore has an incredible ceiling in this game. They're 10-point underdogs. They're going to have to throw. I'd have a lot of confidence in the pass volume being there for the Bears today. So that's good for DJ Moore. That's good for Keenan Allen. That's good for Rome Odunze. I personally think Keenan Allen is a good start today as well. Let me pull up on the YouTube Live. I got wide receiver ranks for us. I like Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen a decent amount, pretty similarly. I think all three of these guys rank within 10 spots of each other. They all project really close. Keenan Allen's coming off his best game of the season, 23.6 fantasy points. He was a wide receiver 5. DJ Moore was wide receiver 4 last week. Keenan Allen was wide receiver 5. In kind of a somewhat comparable matchup, too, versus the Vikings, in comparison to this matchup versus the Lions. Keenan had 9 for 86. He had a 32% target share. That was his highest of the season. By far the most targets he's had in a game of 15. But it wasn't like Rome Odunze was left out. He still had 10 targets, too. He didn't have a great game, 8.9 points. He only caught 5 of his 10 targets. But since we've seen the new coaching staff take over for the Bears, the new OC, the new play caller, they're running almost exclusively 3 wide receiver sets, which I do think bodes well for them in this matchup. I think the Bears' offense will keep this game closer than people expect. I think they cover the 10-point spread. But yeah, we're starting DJ, we're starting Keenan, we're starting Rome Odunze in a lot of spots. And none of them are like absolute must starts in a week with no bye weeks. There's going to be leagues where it maybe does make sense to bench some of these guys, but you should feel pretty good with DJ, Keenan, and Odunze today. I'm absolutely terrified for DeAndre Swift. I want nothing to do with Swift in this matchup. Lions allowing the 4th fewest points per game to running backs this season. DeAndre Swift had 9.5 points last week, only 30 rushing yards for DeAndre Swift last week. This is a very difficult game on the ground for the Bears. I think I take the under at 13.5 rushing attempts. He had 13 last week. He's been right around 13 to 16 in most games. Rush share was fine. Only an 8.5% target share, though. Roschon is also a threat to steal the goal line touches. And Roschon stealing some of the receiving work. The role looked a little bit better for Swift last week than it did the week before. But I'm benching Swift if I can. He's running back 27 in the Walter Picks app this week. We were live on YouTube, guys. We were live on TikTok. Smash the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. I cannot see your comments unless you follow on TikTok. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps me out a ton. I do appreciate it. Thankful for all of you on this wonderful Thursday morning. We got a great slate of games ahead of us. All right. Why so low on DK? Yes, DK Metcalf picked up an injury. Not 100% that DK Metcalf plays this week. We're waiting for more information, but he did not practice yesterday with a new shoulder injury for DK Metcalf. All right, let's get to the other side of this Bears game before I get sidetracked to the start sits. All right, so the on the line side of the ball. So we're starting the Bears receivers. I think Caleb Williams is an interesting upside play too, but I think the only good starts really for the Bears are the wide receivers in this matchup. On the line side of the ball, obviously you're starting Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. This is a revenge game for Monty. He picked up an injury last week, and we saw what can happen last week. I think really the first time all season, Monty picked up an injury. It looked like he was good enough to go back in. They didn't put him back in. We end up seeing a season-high 66.7% snap percentage for Gibbs, and he absolutely smashes. 25 fantasy points, scored twice on the ground. He had 90 rushing yards, 3 catches. If either of these guys miss time, the other one is a top 3 running back in fantasy football and maybe the number 1 running back in fantasy football. Monty's going to be playing today, but yeah, both these guys are top 16 options. Gibbs is a decent bit ahead of Monty. Let me hop over to the running back ranks here. I got some additional insights for you on this special Thursday live stream. I got the rankings for the week up ahead of time here, so I'll pull up the running back ranks here as we look through this. But David Montgomery is a good start. He's not a must start in all situations, but he's about as good of a chance of a touchdown of any running back this week, so you can feel pretty good about him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, still a must start wide receiver. He's been banged up, dealing with a knee injury. And last week was his first week without a touchdown since week 2. It was 8 straight games, I think he had. Yeah, 8 straight games. And he was getting up there to the NFL record, but didn't score last week. Still played 94% of snaps, though. The Bears have been the number one defense first wide receivers this season. There is not a defense allowing fewer fantasy points to wide receivers than the Chicago Bears. So you can be a little bit nervous about Amon-Ra, but he's obviously needs to be started in basically all fantasy leagues still. It's not like we've seen no receivers have success. I mean, just last week, Jordan Addison had 30 points. He was the wide receiver one last week, 8 catches at 162. But Justin Jefferson, he had his worst game of the season last week, 4.7 points, completely taken out of the game. I mean, one of these catches came on the last drive. He had, I think, under 2 fantasy points heading into the last drive of the game last week for that Vikings-Bears matchup. So I'm definitely a little bit nervous about Amon-Ra, but you kind of have to start him in fantasy. I don't really want to start Goff in this game. I think this will be a very run-heavy attack by the Lions. Both these offenses match up pretty well versus these defenses, right? The Lions, they've really struggled to stop wide receivers this season. They've been great against every other position. And the Bears, well, they've been really good against every position other than the running backs. And that's not good when you're playing the Detroit Lions, who have arguably the best rushing attack or second best rushing attack after the Eagles in the NFL. This is a top 2 offensive line and 2 of the better running backs in the league. So I think the Lions end up winning, but this game's closer than people expect. It's a 10-point spread. I think the Bears keep it closer than that. I like DJ, Keenan, and Adunze today. I think Adunze is the most underrated of the group. And we're starting Gibbs, we're starting Monty. And I'm not starting Jameson Williams. He does really kind of fit that Jordan Addison role a bit. Sam Laporta is interesting. I actually think Sam Laporta is getting a bit underrated in this game too. Let me hop over the tight end ranks here as we talk through this game one. Again, we're going to talk through all 3 games, and then we're going to grind through the start sits. We're going to get to a ton of start sit comments on this live stream today. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. A shout out to everyone who's tuned in on this holiday. Hit the like button and the subscribe button if you're watching live on YouTube. Helps me out way more than you could possibly realize. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button. All right, let's get to the tight end ranks here. Because Sam Laporta does not rank well this week. He does not project well this week. Sam Laporta is having a downright bad season. He's averaging 8.4 fantasy points per game. He's been over 12.5 fantasy points just twice this season. He's been under 5 fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games. I mean, there's a low floor for Sam Laporta. But I do think he's an intriguing sleeper in this game today. You know, I was in on the Tucker Kraft a couple weeks ago. He put up a donut versus the Bears, for those of you that tune into all the lives. That was one of the biggest misses, I think, for me of the season. But then last week, TJ Hawkinson goes 714, and we were in on that, talked about that on the Sunday live. We were very in on Hawkinson last week with Josh Oliver out. And I'm pretty in on Laporta in this game, given this matchup. And Sam Laporta also seems to be about as healthy as he's been all season. 93% snap percentage. Last week, that was the second highest of the season for Sam Laporta. 82% route participation. That was the highest of the season last week for Sam Laporta. We just saw this Bears defense take Justin Jefferson out of the game. And if they're able to do something similar in this game to Amon-Ra and or to Jameson Williams, you got to think Sam Laporta steps up. And we really haven't seen a big Sam Laporta game yet this year. I think we could see it today. I do think it's in the cards. Today, I think Sam Laporta is an interesting sleeper today. He doesn't project well because the floor has been bad all season. Again, he's been under 5 points in 3 of his last 5 games. He missed week 11, so we're not counting that one against him. But it seems like he might be the healthiest he's been all season. The role was the biggest it's been all year. Last year, he had an 18% target share last game too. He's been now at least 15% target share in each of his last 4 games. So the role seems to be improving over the last month for Sam Laporta over what it's been in the first 6 weeks of the season. So I'm intrigued by Sam Laporta today, even though he projects really poorly. All right, that's the Bears-Lions game. Again, I think the Bears keep this game close. I would not be personally shocked if the Bears pulled out a massive upset in Detroit today, because I think the wide receiver matchups here for the Bears are very strong. Caleb Williams coming off arguably his best game as a pro. And it seems like the firing of the offensive coordinator for the Bears and the new play caller is going to be a good thing. All right, so on to the second game, the banger of the football game. Today, we got the Giants traveling to the Dallas Cowboys. Drew Lock, the third starting QB now for the Giants. Drew Lock better than Tommy DeVito. I think he's better. So I don't think this is bad for the Giants. If anything, this is good for the Giants. It's bad for Giants fans who maybe want them to lose for a better draft pick, but it's better for everybody else. It's better for all the fantasy players. You know, Malik Neighbors, massive ceiling in this game. I think you need to be starting Malik Neighbors this week versus the Cowboys. The Cowboys defense has been one of the worst defenses in the NFL this season. They've been crushed by running backs, and I'm a little bit nervous about Tyrone Tracy. I know we're going to get some Tyrone Tracy comments today. We got props of the day. James, I got you with some props coming up here after we get through all 3 games. I got a DraftKings lineup for you today, too, a Thanksgiving-specific DraftKings lineup. We got 3 free player props, all for today, and then we're going to grind through start-sits once we get there, too. Pull up the wide receiver ranks here. But, yeah, you got to be starting Malik Neighbors, who's been pretty disappointing really since the start of the season. He ripped off 3 straight games over 23 fantasy points. Week 2, 3, 4. We have not seen him over 15 fantasy points since. And I think today's about as good of a matchup that we could see since that stretch. Yeah, this is the best matchup that Malik Neighbors has had since that stretch. And actually his last game, Malik Neighbors' last game, over 20 points, over 15 points, was against this Dallas Cowboys defense back in week 4. He had 12 catches for 115 yards in that game. That was a 39.5% target share. He's been over a 30% target share of basically every game of the season. He is by far leading the NFL in target share, and I don't think that changes with Drew Lock. And I do think Drew Lock gives him a higher upside than Tommy DeVito. So yeah, top 15 wide receiver, Malik Neighbors. He pretty much has to be started in all spots. I'd start guys like George Pickens, Drake London. I probably would go Amon-Ra over him, T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans. I'd still probably play over him. We're going to get to CeeDee Lamb on the other side of this game in a second. But yeah, Malik Neighbors is a borderline must start. Tracy, I think I lean towards benching him. He fumbled again last week, scored 9 points in a great matchup versus the Bucs. This is a great matchup for him versus the Cowboys, but he's had back-to-back great matchups, guys. He played the Panthers in week 10. He played good in that game. He fumbled that game away for the Giants and ended up scoring 15.4 fantasy points. Not bad, obviously. 103 rushing yards and a touchdown, but he only had 1 catch. And then last week versus the Bucs, only 42 rushing yards in a great spot. The offense was struggling to sustain drives. And then he had 4 catches for 28 yards. Those all came in garbage time. He actually only ran 8 routes. I mean, the role was really not great for Tracy last week, guys. He played 41% of snaps. He only ran 8 routes, 22% route participation. His rush share was at 45%. I'm the lowest we've seen in a month. The snap share was about as low as we've seen since he took over as the starter. And he fumbled again. And so there's not much reason to think this changes that much heading into this week. He definitely is the best running back on the Giants, the most talented, most efficient running back on the Giants, but he is splitting work with Singletary still. Eric Gray still will get some snaps. And I think the Giants will be trailing in this game, and his receiving role has not been great. Again, only 8 routes last week. I mean, the route participation in weeks prior had been much better than that. So I'm nervous about Tracy. I think he's a very risky play today. The matchup is good, so there's some upside there. But I think the floor is really low for Tracy as well. You know, Keenan Allen versus Tracy, I think that question was getting asked in the Discord yesterday. I would go Keenan Allen pretty easily there. I would go all 3 of the Bears receivers over Tracy today pretty easily. I think the ceiling for all 3 of those guys is significantly better than Tracy's ceiling. Please don't start Wan'Dale Robinson today. Please don't start Devin Singletary, Darius Slayton today. I think Theo Johnson, similar to Sam Laporta, interesting sleeper. I definitely would take Laporta over him. But we've had now, 4 straight games with at least 3 catches, 4 straight games with at least 6.5 fantasy points. I don't hate Theo Johnson's props today. He's not one of the free player props on this live stream, but he's been over his prop line, which I think is at 24.5 yards in 5 straight games. And it's not like the Cowboys have been very good versus tight ends. I guess they're 4th best in receptions allowed. But the last few games, we've seen Goddard, Schultz, and Ertz all go over 8 fantasy points. So interesting sleeper, Theo Johnson. On the Cowboy side, let's pull up Drew Lock here for a second. I have more confidence in Drew Lock than Tommy DeVito. I was very down on the Giants offense last week when we talked through it. And, you know, I think most people were with me on that. I'm not overly bullish on Drew Lock. I mean, these are the 2 starts we saw from Lock last season. 17.3 fantasy points, 12.1. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, by the way, come to the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. I can share my screen on the YouTube live. So it's just a little bit better of a viewing experience. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're on the YouTube live. We got Drew Lock's game logs up right now. And we're looking at his 2 starts from last season. He completed over 66% of his passes in both those. You know, one of these games came against this horrible Eagles secondary. One of them was against a good 49er secondary. I think it gives them a little bit more hope than Tommy DeVito, and it wouldn't be shocking to see an even better passing ceiling than Daniel Jones. They weren't starting Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock because they thought Tommy DeVito was better. They were starting him for the fans, and there were some contract incentives they didn't want Drew Lock hitting. But at this point, it's out of their hands. Tommy DeVito is out in this game. I actually don't know if he's been confirmed out, but I think it's close enough to confirm that we can confidently talk about Drew Lock being in. I can refresh the news here in a second. All right, let's get to the other side of this game, the Dallas Cowboys. So I think the Cowboys win this game. I think they cover the spread in this game. I think Rico Dowdle is a fantastic play today. I'll go back to the running back ranks here. And again, we're going to get to the start sits here coming up probably like 10, 15 minutes away from grinding through some start sits. We only got one more game, like two more games, I guess, quickly to talk through. But yeah, I like the Cowboys to win this game. CeeDee Lamb's a must start this week. His target share has been great with Cooper Rush. I mean, he's like a little bit in dare I say, the Wan'Dale Robinson role where the air yards really haven't been incredible. For CeeDee Lamb, look at this, 41 air yards last week on a 37% target share. He had 12 targets, but 41 air yards. I mean, he's getting so many easy looks right around the line of scrimmage. Not a huge ceiling there for Lamb in that role, but a very, very good floor. I mean, he's been over 16 points now in, 6 of his last 7 games. I know some of those you weren't with Cooper Rush, but he's back-to-back games over 16 fantasy points, back-to-back games with at least 8 catches and 67 receiving yards. He hasn't scored yet with Rush. He's got a good chance to do that today. CeeDee Lamb's an absolute must start. And then Rico Dowdle is also a must start this week. He is. We just saw the Giants allow 4 rushing touchdowns. They're 1 to each of the running backs last week. Rashad White scored, Bucky Irving scored, Sean Tucker scored, and Baker Mayfield ran one in. In total, to just the running backs, the Giants allowed over 200 yards combined, total yards, rushing and receiving, and 3 touchdowns to Rashad White, Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker. And Rico Dowdle is going to be in for a big workload today. Rico Dowdle is coming off one of his best usage games of the season, 60% snap share for Rico Dowdle last week. That was the second highest of his season. It was the highest rush share of the season for Rico Dowdle, 68% rush share. He had 19 carries. That was the second most of the season. Had another 3 targets as well. He's got at least 3 targets in 4 straight games. I mean, he is the clear lead back right now, and this is one of the best matchups of his season. He's really got a great schedule rest of the season. He gets the Giants this week, then the Bengals, Panthers, Bucks. I mean, really, really good schedule throughout the rest of the season for Rico Dowdle. So yeah, Rico Dowdle must start. He had 10.8 points last week versus the Commanders. I think that's about his floor in this game. He did not score. We have not seen Rico Dowdle score a rushing touchdown yet this season. He does have 3 receiving touchdowns, no rushing touchdowns yet. He probably scores a rushing touchdown in this game. Thoughts on starting Hurts over Burrow? Yeah, we'll get to the start sits here in a second, but I would go Hurts over Burrow. All right, seeing some questions for some different positions. We'll get to those in a second too. But yeah, I think the Cowboys handedly beat the Giants in this game. I really don't want to start anyone other than Lamb and Dowdle, though. Every other player on this team is a must bench unless you have the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense is a very strong defensive option for fantasy this week. All right, on to the night game here. We got the Miami Dolphins. So let's hop to Weatherman Sam here for a second because there is some weather to be aware of. I'm sure it's going to get talked about a lot. And the weather is cold. That's the weather report. It's cold. The Dolphins-Packers game, the feel-like temperature to start the game is going to be around 15 degrees. So below freezing temperatures here in Green Bay. These first 2 games of the day, these are in-dome games. So, perfect weather. The last game of the day is outside in Green Bay. 15-degree weather. It's going to feel as low as 8 degrees by the fourth quarter of this game. It's going to get colder throughout the game. Personally, I'm not concerned at all. I'm really not concerned at all about this weather. And I think this Dolphins weather stuff gets a little bit overblown. It's important to understand the extremes when it comes to weather. And this is not an extreme weather game. It's not. 15-degree weather, you put some Under Armour on, you wear a sweatshirt underneath if you really need to, and you can play through this cold weather very easily. I do not think this is going to impact the efficiency or the volume of any player in this game. The narrative here is obviously the Dolphins, and Tua has struggled in the cold, and I'm sure there's some data showing how bad Tua has been in some of the cold games, but some of those games were extreme cold. We got to separate out the extreme cold from the cold. just cold weather is not that concerning. And there is not a large sample size of data suggesting that cold weather negatively impacts NFL offenses. The game that the Dolphins lost in the playoffs last year, that was extreme cold, guys. I was very concerned before that game. That game, if you guys recall, I think it was like -25, -30 degree type of weather. That's not what we're dealing with tonight. I mean, this is very manageable cold weather. It's cold, sure, it is cold. It's not extremely cold in the grand scheme of the spectrum of cold. So that's the Weatherman Sam take in this game. By the way, Weatherman Sam had a big week. What was it, last week? The Thursday night game? The snow game between the Steelers and the Browns? I wasn't concerned about that game. I mean, we were on the weather report. We knew there was going to be snow. There wasn't substantial enough wind to be very concerned. And what we see, they over smashed. The offenses were passing still pretty effectively. And the snow was even a little worse than we anticipated. And it didn't matter. These guys can play in the snow. And the other thing that often gets lost in a lot of this weather analysis is, guys, the defense plays in the same weather as the offense. It's not just the offense playing in this weather. And a lot of times the snow actually benefits the offense because of that. I always think back to the LeSean McCoy snow games when it snowed. All right, so that's the Weatherman Sam take. I don't care about the weather. That's the take for me. And they're going to talk about it way too much. 15 degrees, it's going to be cold. Just be aware it's going to be cold. If you're into the Tua sucks in the cold narrative, then no, so be it. But just be aware it's cold. I'm not too worried about it. So you're starting Achane. You're definitely starting Achane. I think Tua is a great option this week. And this is going to be an interesting spot for the Dolphins offense because Tua is coming off back-to-back massive games. He's been over 23 fantasy points in back-to-back games. He's thrown for almost 600 yards and 7 touchdowns in his last 2 games. Tua, by the way, by far leading the NFL in completion percentage. It's really not close. 73.3% completion percentage for Tua this season. He's been over 71% completion percentage every single game since he returned from the concussion. I mean, truly incredible completion percentage here for Tua. And this is his hardest spot in really the last month against the Green Bay Packers. He doesn't get to play the Patriots and the Raiders every single week, so it wouldn't be shocking to see him take a small step back. But this Dolphins offense has been cooking over the last 2 weeks, and I do think they keep this game competitive. I do think the Dolphins have a very real chance to win this game in Lambeau, in the cold, and kind of silence the cold narratives around the Miami Dolphins. We haven't seen a quarterback over 20 points versus the Packers, though, since week 8. That was Trevor Lawrence, but they played Brandon Allen last week. Caleb Williams the week before that, then Jared Goff in a game where the Lions were running the ball a ton. CJ Stroud only had 5 points. Kyler only had 12 points. Stafford didn't do anything back in week 5. McDonald had a decent game. There hasn't been very many big quarterback games versus the Packers. Maybe we see one today from Tua, who's been about as hot as any QB over the last few weeks. I think Tyreek Hill is a borderline must start in this game. Dolphins underdogs. Tyreek has not had a ceiling this season, but the floor has been solid for Tyreek Hill. I would easily play Tyreek over Waddle. We're talking about Waddle. I know we're going to get a ton of Waddle start sits. Waddle is the definition of a start sit nightmare moving forward. I mean, he's been horrible all season. He's had one good game really this whole season, maybe 2 if you count week 1. Tyreek has really only had one big game, but he's been consistently involved every week. He's had a floor of about 10 fantasy points, which is not bad. And I do still think the ceiling is there. The target share has been pretty consistent for Tyreek, only 15% last week. But I feel okay about Tyreek's ceiling in this game. He could have a 100-plus yard game in the cold in Green Bay. So Jalen Waddle, he's coming off his best game of the season. Yeah, week 1 and then week 12 last week. Those are the only 2 games where he's been over 9 fantasy points. He's been under 9 fantasy points, guys, in all but 2 games this season. He is not a safe play. There's a ceiling here. We saw the ceiling last week. He actually should have had even more points last week. He almost had another touchdown in this game. But again, he doesn't get the Patriots this week. He gets the Packers. Packers have allowed the 9th fewest points per game to receivers this season. They're allowing only 138 receiver yards per game. And there's the target share, too, for Waddle. Wasn't even that good. It wasn't even like the roll was like amazing. 22% target share for Waddle. Nothing crazy. It was 9 targets. They threw a bunch. The air yards were good For Waddle, maybe we see Waddle get it going. Obviously, we've seen a long history of Waddle being very effective and good. We just haven't seen it this season for the most part. So a pretty risky start sit here with Waddle. I would say there's a ceiling, but a very low floor. And with Tyreek, there's a pretty solid floor and an even higher ceiling. So I'm still going with Tyreek over Waddle pretty easily. Let me hop over to the wide receiver ranks here on both live streams. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, everyone. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. It is the best holiday of the year. We got 3 football games on today, starting out with the Bears Lions. Then we got a banger between the Giants and the Cowboys. And then we're talking about the night game right now between the Dolphins and the Packers. And again, I think the Dolphins keep this one close. I think with how their offense is playing, this will be a close game. The Dolphins defense has also been a bit underrated this season. All right, Jonnu Smith, we got to talk about him as well. I think he's the number 1 tight end in fantasy football over the last month. Jonnu Smith has been the number 1 tight end in fantasy over the last month. I mean, he's having an incredible season. He's at number 6 now in fantasy points per game over the whole course of the season. He's got back-to-back games over 23 points, back-to-back games where Jonnu Smith is ranked as a top 2 fantasy football tight end. I mean, I did not see this coming. And I have not been on this. This is definitely an L for me with Jonnu Smith. I have him maybe out there on a few best ball teams, I hope. I definitely do. I mean, it's pretty crazy when you think about last season, how frustrating it was that Jonnu Smith was stealing red zone targets away and stealing so much work away from Kyle Pitts. He's having a better season than Kyle Pitts this year, guys. Jonnu Smith is. Wild stuff. It's hard to say for sure that this is going to continue on a team where he has to take targets away from Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Devon Achane, but he's been out-targeting Waddle and Tyreek very consistently. And this is not a bad spot for him either. I mean, he's a pretty good start this week. He ranks as a top 7 tight end for us this week. I'll pull up the tight end ranks here. The only tight ends I'm starting over Jonnu Smith this week, David Njoku, Taysom Hill, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Bowers, and McBride. That's it. End of list. I mean, the tight end tiers, I think, are pretty clear this week. There's like a very long tier 2 at tight end this week, but tier 1's clear. It's McBride, Bowers, Kittle, Kelce. And Kittle, especially if Bowers play, if Purdy plays, that's still up in the air. But even last week without Purdy, Kittle was the only effective guy in that offense. And then tier 2, Jonnu Smith squarely in that tier. Taysom, Njoku, Jonnu, Cade Otton, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz, Hunter Henry, and Hawkinson. I put all those guys in tier 2. But Jonnu Smith's near the top of that list. So, yeah, he's a pretty good start in this spot. The Packers have allowed the 7th most receptions per game, the 12th most receiving yards per game, about a half a touchdown per game to tight ends. Just last week, Kittle went for 682 and a touchdown, catching passes from Brandon Allen. So Jonnu Smith, I would probably start over Laporta. He's, I think, the number 1 tight end on the slate today. I'd play Kelce over him, though, tomorrow. On the Packers side of the ball, so we're not going to have Romeo Doubs in this game. That's pretty massive for the wide receivers. I think it puts Jaden Reed, near must-start territory, but the matchup's not great here. The Dolphins have been good versus wide receivers. They rank 8th best versus wide receivers this season. We haven't seen very many spots this year without Romeo Doubs, but when one of these Packers receivers misses time, it really does consolidate this offense, make these wide receivers a lot more appealing, because this is one of the offenses that spreads the ball around the most in the NFL. Really, these are 2 offenses that spread the ball around a lot in this game, but no Romeo Doubs. That definitely makes Jaden Reed a lot more appealing. The Pats receivers did nothing last week. The Raiders receivers did nothing the week before that versus the Dolphins. They played the Rams the week prior to that, and Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua both did well. The Raiders' Pats receivers are 2 of the worst receiver rooms in the league. So, yeah, I think the Packers, at least one of these receivers, ends up outperforming pretty dramatically. Jaden Reed and Christian Watson are the 2 that I'm most excited about, though. Dontavian Wicks, we really have not seen him do much. The role should be better for him with Doubs out, but I still think he will split some of that role with the other receivers on this team. We've not seen Dontavian Wicks go over 3.5 fantasy points since week 7. He's only gone over 4 fantasy points 3 times this whole season. So he's an interesting sleeper in dart throw, but definitely not a guy I want to force in the starting lineup. And Tucker Kraft is not startable, I don't think, in this game. He did better last week. He had 10.6 points last week. He scored, but he only had 2 catches, 9% target share. We've now seen Tucker Kraft under a 12% target share in 3 of his last 4 games. Most of those games, I think all those games, without Luke Musgrave. I mean, he's out there almost every single play. He's running routes on almost every single drop back, but his role has not been good. So yeah, Jaden Reed, I think is a good start. Josh Jacobs too, must start. Must start with Josh Jacobs in this game. He's back-to-back games over 23 fantasy points, back-to-back weeks for Josh Jacobs being a top 5 running back. He's got 4 touchdowns and 180 rushing yards in his last 2 games. Hop over to the running back ranks again here. Yeah, starting Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs right at the top of tier 2. For me, I think you could argue Josh Jacobs into tier 1 as well. Yeah, I'm playing Taysom over Njoku and Ott this week. I am. I got Taysom at number 5. He's the top tier 2 for me. Yeah, Josh Jacobs is a must start. This is a good spot too for Josh Jacobs matchup wise. The Dolphins have not been very good versus running backs this season. Again, they were okay the last couple of weeks, but they played the Raiders and the Pats. Now, this is a really, really prove it spot here for the Dolphins. After 2 huge games against 2 horrible teams, now they get a true playoff matchup versus the Packers in the cold. We've seen a lot of receptions from running backs versus the Dolphins. That should bode well for Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs not only scored 3 rushing touchdowns last week, but the week before that, he had 4 catches for 58 yards. He only ran 5 routes last week, but there's a really, really run-heavy game script here for the Packers. They will run a lot when they are leading. So Josh Jacobs a must start. Jaden Reed, a good start. I think the Dolphins keep this game close, though. I think these teams are pretty comparable, and I'm not buying into the cold narrative here for the Dolphins. I think this weather will get overblown in this game. All right, on to the last game before we get to some of the starts. It's free player prop and the DraftKings lineup for today. Happy Thanksgiving to all. This is my favorite holiday of the year for sure. We got football, we got family, we got food. I mean, it really, how does it get better than that? It really does. You can't convince me otherwise. All right, so we got the Chiefs playing the Raiders. Second time this season these 2 teams are playing. We got the second time of the year and really the last time of the year because the Raiders are not a playoff team. We got the Kermit the Frog narrative here for Pat Mahomes. Rewind to right during draft season before the season started in the NFL preseason. Got the Kermit the Frog remark from a member of the Raiders defense about Pat Mahomes' voice, and very justifiable remark. He does kind of sound like Kermit the Frog. It was a pretty good dig there on Pat Mahomes. But last time we saw this Kermit the Frog narrative come out, this was week 8. It was at the time the best game of the season from Pat Mahomes, 19.2 fantasy points, 262 and 2. I think this is the floor for Mahomes in this game. Right around 19 fantasy points. Mahomes is starting to heat up a little bit fantasy-wise. In the first 7 weeks of the season, guys, we did not see Mahomes go over 17.5 fantasy points a single time. Then we got the Kermit the Frog narrative versus the Raiders. He scored 19.2. We have now not seen him go under 16.5 fantasy points since then. That's 5 straight games. His floor is 16.5 points right now. His ceiling is much higher than that. Last week was his best fantasy game of the season, 28.8 points. He scored, he had 269 passing yards, 3 TDs, and he also ran for 60 yards on 5 carries. So yeah, I like Mahomes a lot this week. I think he's borderline must start. Week without buys, there are other quarterback options I would play over Mahomes, like Herbert and Burrow and Jaden Daniels. I'd play Baker over all those guys. Josh Allen, Lamar, and Hurts. I'd play over him, but yeah, Mahomes is a great option here in week 13. Kelsey's a must start. Kelsey had a huge game last time versus the Raiders as well. Scored 25 fantasy points, had 10 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown. He's been a little disappointing the last couple of weeks. He had 6 for 62 last week and a good matchup versus the Panthers, but this is a fantastic spot for Kelsey. Definitely an argument that he should be tight end 1 this week. I will go to the wide receiver ranks next. Yeah, so for the receivers for the Chiefs, I don't know how you trust any of these guys right now. They're playing a hodgepodge of wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins is splitting more time now with Juju Smith-Schuster now that he's back. Xavier Worthy has had some flashes recently. He scored 9 points last week. He scored almost 17 versus the Bills the week before that. Last time when he played the Raiders, he scored. He had 4 for 37 and a touchdown, scored 14 points, one of his better games of the season. He does have a ceiling, but the floor is low for all of these wide receivers. And Pacheco is likely to play in this game. So I want really nothing to do with Kareem Hunt, who's been pretty disappointing in his own right the last few weeks. Kareem Hunt back-to-back games under 12 points in fantastic matchups. I mean, he's a little bit like a poor man's Najee Harris, and not in a good way right now for the Chiefs and for fantasy football. He's reliable for the Chiefs. He's playing a ton. The rush share has been great, but with Pacheco back, He hasn't scored in back-to-back games, and the matchup's not bad here for Hunt, but I really think he's a bench this week. Devon Vele. Yeah, he's definitely been on a heater as well. All right, so Hopkins, he's startable, but definitely not a must start. A pretty risky start, I would say. He scored last week to save his fantasy day, but I mean, the snap percentage, he's playing under 50% of snaps in back-to-back games. He's under 20% target share in 3 straight games. I mean, the role here is not safe for any of these receivers. Really, the only 2 guys you should feel confident in here are Mahomes and Kelsey. I think the Chiefs will likely throttle the Raiders in this game, behind the Kermit the Frog narrative on the Raiders side of the ball. Brock Bowers is a must start. The Chiefs have struggled versus tight ends this season. Really, the only the position they've really struggled against. Bowers is coming off one of his most disappointing games of the season, but Brock Bowers is still on pace. Brock Bowers is still on pace, guys, to break Puka Nakua's reception record from last season. Truly incredible from a tight end. He leads all tight ends in receptions. He's 3rd in receiving yards per game. He's 2nd in fantasy points per game in a game where they're going to be trailing. He had 10.8 versus the Chiefs last time, 5 for 58. That's his floor, right around his floor in this game. I mean, we just saw his floor outcome last week, 7.8. I mean, he is the tight end 2 in the Walter Pick staff this week, only behind Trey McBride. Start Marv or Brian Thomas. Yeah, I think it's Brian Thomas over Marv. I do like both those guys a lot. We will talk through that a lot on the Sunday Live. I like both of those receivers a lot this week. I think they're both really solid starts. I would play Tracy over Pacheco. Don't start Pacheco. I didn't mention that when we just talked about the Chiefs. I don't want to start Hunt. I definitely don't want to start Pacheco. I mean, similar to, not exactly like, but similar to the Jonathan Brooks situation last week. I mean, you could not start Jonathan Brooks last week. That ended up being a very good call. You can't start Jonathan Brooks until you see the role grow. You can't start Pacheco until you see his role back. And there's absolutely no guarantee. And I would not expect Pacheco to just step back into the workhorse role he was in before the injury. Hunt has played good enough, and the Chiefs are big enough favorites. There's just no reason to like put this massive workload onto Pacheco immediately coming off the injury. Jacoby Myers is a pretty good start in this game, despite kind of the tough matchup. Last time versus the Chiefs, he had 17 points, caught 6 for 52 and a touchdown. He's been over 8.8 points now in 4 straight. He's been over 17 points in 3 of his last 4 games. The role is very strong right now for Jacoby Myers. He's playing basically every single snap. He had a 32.6% target share last week. He's been over 25% of the team's targets now in 3 of his last 4. I mean, he's the clear top receiver on this team alongside Brock Bowers. Basically, both these guys together, they're going to combine for over half the targets any given week. So both of them are interesting starts. I like Bowers more than Myers. Bowers a must start. Myers is a good start. I would say not a must start. All right, so that's the Raiders Chiefs game. I went through all 4 games. Again, if we're talking about against the spread, I would go with, I'll pull this up here, the Bears plus 10, the Cowboys minus 3.5, the Dolphins plus 3.5, and I'd probably take the Chiefs. I think they're minus, was it 13? They're minus 13. I mean, with 13 points, I honestly think I'd probably go with the Raiders there after the Panthers kept it close last week, but the Chiefs are going to win. The Lions are almost definitely going to win, but I think that the Bears game, the Bears will keep it closer than people expect. The Cowboys and the Packers are the favorites in the other 2 games. I think the Dolphins cover the spread there, have a good chance to win. Pretty toss-up game for me there. I think the weather is getting overrated, though, in basically all the Dolphins stuff. So I'm happy to take the Dolphins there, and then the Cowboys I like as well. All right, let's talk through the 3 free player props I got for you today. Then we'll get to the DraftKings lineup. Then we will grind through the start-sits for the rest of the live. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Truly, guys, truly thankful for all of you out there. I'm going to do my best to get to all the start-sit questions that I can. We're about to go through Jerry or Waddle. Oh, man, that's actually close. We got a Jerry Jeudy revenge game versus the Browns on Monday Night Football. Sorry, not versus the Browns, versus the Broncos on Monday Night Football. Browns versus the Broncos in that game. That's close. I probably would go. I think. Yeah, I'd go Jeudy. I'd go Jeudy over Waddle. I'm going to have to be telling a lot of people I think the bench Waddle after his big game last week. Good morning, Kylo. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family as well. Thankful for what you do. Thank you, Kylo. Appreciate you, man. Would you go Swift or Hubbard? Yeah, I'd go Hubbard over Swift. I would. And then JMO and Dallas D good starts. I think Dallas D is a great start. Jameson Williams, I'm a little bit less certain of. I think there's a ceiling there. Jameson Williams kind of fits that Jordan Addison role that we saw last week. Jordan Addison was the wide receiver 1 last week, 31 points. And the Bears really shut down Justin Jefferson. He had his worst game of the season. He only had 2 fantasy points going into the last drive, end up under 5 fantasy points. Justin Jefferson. That's a little scary for Amon-Ra. Really a little scary for Jameson Williams too. Like, it's not a great matchup for the Lions receivers. It's a great matchup for the running backs. So I would say Jameson Williams a pretty risky, high ceiling option. Dallas D is a great option though. Versus Drew Lock and a crumbling Giants team. All right, let's get to the three free player props of the day. So starting out, I got Sam Laporta over 37.5 receiving yards. I think Sam Laporta is a risky fantasy option, but I do really like this prop line. Let's talk through it. I missed on Kraft's receiving yards line versus the Bears a couple weeks ago, but he didn't get, I think he had, 2 targets in that game? 1 target in that game? Yeah, he had 1 target, Tucker Kraft. I mean, Sam Laporta is getting more than a target in this game. And as I looked into the data here for Sam Laporta, there's a lot of encouraging signs that Sam Laporta might be able to turn it around here down the stretch of the season. And one of them is just the usage. So he's playing the most snaps he's played really all season. 93% of the snaps last week. That was the second most of the year. And then he had the second most routes he ran of the year. His route participation last week was the best of the season, 82% route participation. The target share has also been actually pretty encouraging for Sam Laporta over the last month. His average this season is 14.2%, but he's been at least 15% in each of his last 4 full games. He didn't play in week 11 with an injury, but he's been at least 15%. His average is close to like 20 to 25% over the last 4 games. He's had at least 6 targets in 3 of those games. And then you look at the matchup here versus the Bears, and it's hard not to get a little excited. They've allowed 73 receiving yards per game to tight ends this season. That's 6th worst in the NFL. And just last week, TJ Hawkinson caught 7 of his, 9 targets he had? 7 of his 9 targets for 114 yards. And they're setting the Sam Laporta's line at 37.5 in a game where they're playing the Bears. I think this game, too, will be closer than people expect. And that's part of the reason I like this as well. I got 2 props from this game. I also like the Rome Odunze 43.5 receiving yards line. This is a beat it in 1 catch type of line for Rome Odunze. I have a lot of confidence in all 3 of the Bears receivers today. You know, it's possible 2 of them smash and 1 of them disappoints a bit. But Rome Odunze is playing every single snap, and he has a fantastic matchup here versus the line. So I like the Sam Laporta line. Let me pull up the Odunze data here for a second. We talk through the Odunze one, and then we'll talk about Dowdle as well. I know I already touched on him a little bit. But just last week, we saw 10 targets for Rome Odunze. He only caught 5 of them for 39. But the air yards have been very consistent for Odunze. He's over 100 air yards in 4 of his last 5 games. And week 10, when he didn't get the air yards, I mean, he fell well short of this line. 3 catches, 23 versus the path. They were very run heavy, though, in that game. He's over 20% target share in 3 straight. He's had at least 19% target share in 5 straight games. I mean, the role and the volume are there for Odunze. I still believe he's one of the more underrated receivers in the league. Disappointed efficiency-wise a little bit last week. Only caught 50% of his targets. His catch rate has not been great this season. I do think that will improve as time goes on, though. And this is a very, very good matchup for him versus the Lions. And the Bears are going to throw a ton in this game. I mean, a 20% target share for Odunze in this game could mean 10 targets. It could mean 10 targets in this game. Not all target shares, of course, are created equal. We saw Michael Pittman do okay last week, catching passes from Anthony Richardson, 6 for 96 from Michael Pittman. Really not the best receivers that the Lions have had to play over the past month or so. But yeah, I do like Rome Odunze over yards in this game as well. And then the probably my favorite prop of the day is Rico Dowdle to score. The Giants allowed 4 rushing touchdowns last week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Rico Dowdle has not scored a rushing touchdown this season. We don't need this to be a rushing touchdown. Anytime TD here for Rico Dowdle, it's at plus 100, so dead even odds. I think Rico Dowdle has a great chance to get in the end zone today, and I expect it. I expect him to score today in this matchup versus the Giants. The Cowboys are favorites at home in a dome. Rico Dowdle coming off his highest rush share of the season. I mean, 19 carries last week. Guys, if he gets 19 carries versus the Giants, he's scoring. I mean, really, I think he only needs like 10, and he's got a very good chance to score. Some quick, interesting stats here about these games before we get to the start sits that I pulled from Sharp Football Analysis. The Lions have scored a touchdown on a league high 35.5% of their possessions. That is leads the NFL. Average in the league is 22%. They've also outscored their opponents by 105 points in the first half this season. By far the largest margin in the league. Bears have to keep this game close in the first half. The Giants, speaking of offenses for a second, the Giants have only led on 9% of their offensive snaps this season. The Dallas Cowboys, though, they've been outscored by 118 points at home this season. That's by far the most in the league. Cowboys playing at home in this one. Talking about the Dolphins offense. The Dolphins are at 3.02 points per drive since two were returned in week 8. That's the second best in the league. They've had some good matchups, but they've been a very, very efficient offense this season. All right, let's go to the DraftKings lineup quick. Probably not too surprising with DraftKings lineup here for me after everything we've talked about so far. Shout out to everybody in the YouTube live right now, by the way. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody in the live stream right now. Kyron Williams, where is he? He's in tier 3, number 19 running back this week. I'm a little down on Kyron. It's a good matchup for him, but he's been, I think, under 12.5 points for 4 straight games now. But yeah, the DraftKings lineup. So I'm double stacking Caleb Williams with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze again. I like the Bears passing attack today. I'm running it back in this first game, kicking off in less than 3 hours now, a couple hours away. Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta in this lineup for me too. So I'm really heavy on the Bears-Lions game here. I'm going Tyreek from the Dolphins game, Josh Jacobs on the other side of that game, and they're going with the Cowboys defense and Rico Dowdle stacked together too. I do really like this Dowdle Cowboys defense stack today. The other guys that I didn't get into this lineup, but I would strongly consider today, Malik Neighbors, I think is a really high ceiling for tournaments. And I really think Tyreek Hill in tournaments makes a lot of sense too. These are DraftKings lineups for tournaments specifically. If you're playing tournaments on DraftKings today, do you think Chase Brown or Chuba Hubbard? Definitely Chase Brown. All right, Brian, we got to start sit here for Brian at TikTok Live. Pick 2, Rico, Monty, or London. Yeah, so I saw this earlier too. Rico versus Monty. That one's close. Let me pull up the wide receiver or running back ranks here on the YouTube live as well. Let's go Rico Dowdle versus Monty. I think it's Rico. Yeah, it's Rico Dowdle. It's Rico Dowdle over Monty in a full PPR league, especially. Oh, Drake London 2's got to be considered though too. If you have that as an option, it might be him. No, it's Dowdle, then Monty, then London. Tough matchup here for London versus the Chargers. Yeah, Monty and Rico. Yeah, I would go Monty and Rico too. I think that's the better floor play. I think both Monty and Dowdle have such a good chance at touchdowns. I think I would probably agree with Walter on this one. Purdy or Tua? I mean, do we know for sure Purdy's even playing? And we really don't. I don't think we do, right? He hasn't got a full practice in. Brandon Cooks, by the way, he's likely to be back today. First time we've seen him in quite some time. Let me pull up Brandon Cooks here. Don't think that, affects the game too much. We haven't seen him since week 4. Actually, his last game was against the Giants. He got hurt in the Giants game. Comes back 9 weeks later, plays the Giants again. Aaron Jones or Bucky? Yeah, I really don't want to bench Bucky this week. We got Bucky Irving at running back 17, Aaron Jones at running back 14. It is Aaron Jones there. I'm going to try to prioritize, guys, the Thursday/Friday start sits because I'll be live Sunday morning too. So we're going to try to prioritize the start sits for today. Let's start with quarterback decisions. I'm gonna do what I do on the Sunday morning lives here. If you guys have quarterback start sits, send them in the chat. If you're watching live on TikTok, by the way, hit the follow button. I will not see your comment unless you're following. Why is Tracy so low? Because Tracy, he played 40% of the snaps last week. He fumbled again, and he's on a terrible offense. And he's not in a very good receiving role either. He ran 8 total routes last week. He had 4 catches, but he ran 8 routes all in garbage time. It was a season low really since week 5 for him. Snap percentage. He's splitting time with Devin Singletary. He's on a bad offense. The matchup is good for Tracy. Don't get me wrong. There is a ceiling there, but do not start Devontae Smith. He's touchdown dependent, and I should have realized that last week. Devontae Smith did play last week, and he might not play this week. Would you start Addison or Swift in the flex? Yeah, I don't hate Monty to score. Let's go with Swift versus Addison. Yeah, it's Swift over Addison. Pretty close, but I think it makes sense. Addison coming off a huge game. I mean, he's had a couple big games now. Yeah, 3 of his last 4 games were 15 points. He scored in all 3 of those. Cardinals defense has been pretty inconsistent this season, but yeah, I think it's Swift over Addison. Comparable, better ceiling for Addison, but I think a much better floor there for Swift. whose over-under is 13.5 carries today. I think the under probably goes for Swift. I don't love Swift, but I think he's a floor option. If you want the ceiling, you go Addison there. If you want the floor, you go Swift. I think I would lean Swift, though. I still don't have a ton of confidence in Addison. And yeah, so the night game between the Packers and the Dolphins, I like Josh Jacobs to score in that game. And I also don't hate the Tyreek props in that game, either the receptions and the receiving props for Tyreek. Those aren't the official free player props of the day. I like the props a little bit more in the other games, but we got a good QB one here. Let me go to the QB ranks here too on the TikTok live and on the YouTube live as we talk through this. This was a good QB question here from Josh in the YouTube live. Happy Turkey Day to you as well, guys. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you guys. Seriously, super thankful for all of you, whether you're tuning in for literally the first time or tuning in for the manyth time on these live streams, or you've been tuned in from the beginning, from this morning. We're an hour in now. We got about 30 minutes left in the live, but I love the Walter Picks app. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, man, you got to check it out. I mean, it's going to help you in fantasy down the stretch here. It's going to help you with props for the NFL, for the NBA, for the MLB. When the MLB comes back, we're going to be adding more sports to the betting side of the app too in the near future. I do appreciate you guys a ton checking out the app. It's a free app, and it comes with a completely free 7-day trial to all the premium features in the app too. If you use code SAM when you sign up, that does help me out a ton. All right, let's get to this QB question. Allen or Mahomes, Burrow or Daniels? I mean, yeah, these are all great quarterback options. I'm not benching Allen, I don't think. I don't think you can bench Allen. I mean, we saw it a bit before the bye for the Bills. We're heading into the stage of the season where Josh Allen is just in playoff mode, and he starts running like crazy. And we saw that in his last two games, over 50 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in his last two games. I mean, he's really just up there in the Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson tier, regardless of matchup. You know, it's a little bit of a tough matchup here. The 49ers allowing the second fewest points per game to quarterbacks this season. But yeah, I'm going Allen. I'm going Allen over Mahomes. I like Mahomes a lot too. I mean, Burrow's right up there in tier 2. Burrow, Mahomes, and who's the other option here? Yeah, and Daniels. All these guys are in tier 2. Allen's in tier 1 though. So yeah, I think I would go Allen. Dowdle or Jones? Yeah, it's Dowdle over Aaron Jones, just slightly. AR-15, Goff, Stafford, or Russ? I think it's Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson's a pretty good ceiling option this week versus the Pats. A really good chance at some rushing production in this game. The Pats have been absolutely obliterated by quarterbacks in their last two games. I mean, back-to-back weeks where the Patriots have allowed 4 passing touchdowns. They've allowed over 27.5 fantasy points in back-to-back games. I mean, 60 fantasy points allowed, basically, from the Patriots to quarterbacks in the last two games. I mean, truly, they are getting crushed. Anthony Richardson, not an amazing game from him last week, but he did well versus the Jets the week before that. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. I mean, he could easily score 2 rushing touchdowns in this game versus the Pats. Yes, I'd play him over Stafford, over Russ, over Goff. I don't really want to start Goff this week. I think he's startable in certain spots, but the Bears defense has been pretty good against all positions related to passing and receiving. They're allowing the 3rd fewest points per game to quarterbacks. Darnold and Love did go back-to-back games over 20 points against them the last 2 weeks. So 20 points wouldn't be that crazy from Goff in this game, but what's like the real ceiling for Goff in this one? I don't think we see a Jags-like performance where he dropped 35. I think 20 points is like the ceiling, whereas for Richardson, the ceiling's in north of 30 points. So yeah, I think I would go with Anthony Richardson there. Got an interesting one here. Not a QB one, but we'll get to it anyway because it's definitely Thanksgiving related. Who do I start at flex? Debo, Keenan, Ridley, Adunze, or Amari? Yeah, so this one's between the middle 3 receivers. I don't think you can confidently start Amari this week versus the 49ers. We really haven't seen what the full Amari role is. So I think he's pretty risky here. Let me hop over to the wide receiver ranks. Tua or Kyler? Yeah, I would go Kyler over Tua. I don't hate Tua today, but I would go Kyler over Tua if I had to make that call. Kyler in the Cardinals offense have been super inconsistent. So hop over to the wide receiver ranks that answered this one. All right, so we got Debo, and Debo, like, so tough to trust unless Purdy's playing. Keenan Allen and Adunze I like a lot today. I think I would probably play Keenan here over Debo. Let's get Debo out of here. Put Adunze in. Yeah, it's Keenan. And then, wow, yeah, Ridley and Adunze are close. Ridley and Adunze are both good options. But yeah, I think it's Keenan. Keenan's the best flex option here. Ridley probably has the highest ceiling. Not Keenan projects for the highest ceiling too. Keenan is the best floor and ceiling option. I do really like the Bears passing attack today. I like Keenan a lot. I like Adunze a lot too. He's the free player prop of the day, over 43.5 receiving yards. One of the free player props of the day. But yeah, I think Keenan's a great fantasy option. And Keenan's coming off, what was he, wide receiver 5 last week? Yeah, wide receiver 5, 23.6 points for Keenan last week. Juwan Jennings and Juwan Jennings and Debo. Really, really difficult to trust if Purdy doesn't start. We do have Purdy projected in right now. He was limited Wednesday. We'll decide when we get out there, is the report we're reading here for Purdy. I think it's likely that he plays, and if he plays, it's definitely massive for this entire offense. This is it. The season's pretty much on the line here for the 49ers this week versus the Bills. If the 49ers lose this week, they're under 10% chance to make the NFL playoffs. I mean, they need to win, and they're playing the Bills. That's part of the reason Debo ranks as high as he does. I mean, he doesn't rank that high. He's wide receiver 31. There's a lot of guys I'd play over Debo Samuel. Dowdle or Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, I like both those guys a lot. They're both in my must-start video this week. I really like Brian Thomas Jr. in the spot versus the Texans. It sounds like there's a good chance we see Trevor Lawrence play, which definitely will be good for Brian Thomas Jr., but it's still Dowdle. Still have to play Dowdle. So I have Higgins, CD, Evans, and McConkey. Which 3 do I start? Yeah, so I think you have to bench Evans here. I think you bench Evans. Well, we got Evans one spot ahead of Lamb. And they're both ahead of T. Higgins. Wow. Yeah, interesting spot here for T. Higgins this week, too. I mean, he's really a must-start in most leagues. You got really good options, so I actually think T. Higgins is maybe the bench here. We haven't seen a bad game from T. Higgins really this whole season. I mean, the worst game we saw was week 3. That was a while ago. We've seen him over 12 points, at least 12 points in all the other games since. I mean, missed 3 games in that stretch. The Steelers are his toughest opponent yet, though. Knicks or Burrow against Pittsburgh. Yeah, I still think it's probably Burrow over Knicks. Definitely close call, though. Dowdle or Hall. Man, I mean, here we are. And Breece might not even play. Breece Hall might not play this week. He did not practice yesterday. He's hopeful. The Jets are hopeful that Breece can play. He's dealing with a knee injury. How much are they really pushing Breece through this knee injury, even if he plays? I think it's Dowdle. I think it's Dowdle over Hall. I think it's Gibbs over Hall. I think we have Dowdle and Breece back-to-back in the ranks. In spots like this season, if it's close, you got to take the guy is playing today in a good matchup, and not the guy who might not play or might not play his full role on Sunday in Breece Hall. So, yeah, I think I would go Dowdle there over Breece. All right, Bucky versus Kyren versus Pickens versus Neighbors. Pick 3. Thankful for everything you do, Sam. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Cameron, thankful for you as well, man. Truly, I am. All right, Bucky versus Kyren Williams. Yeah, this is not an easy start sit. This is honestly one of the toughest start sit weeks of the season because there's no bye weeks this week. Week 14 is the final bye week next week. And then we got no bye weeks really the rest of the way. But yeah, when there's no byes, some really tough start sits. Sometimes the byes, make it even easier. But yeah, Kyren Williams versus Pickens and Neighbors too. You got to pick 3 here. I think it's between these two, Bucky and Kyren. I'm starting Pickens and Neighbors, assuming this is a PPR league. And yeah, it's Bucky, man. It's Bucky over Kyren. Kyren has a better boom percentage, but a lower floor. I almost disagree. I almost see it the other way in terms of the ceiling floor here. I mean, we've seen the floor from Kyren. It's 10 points. And this is a good matchup for him. He did score last week, but the receiving role pretty much evaporated in front of our eyes. He didn't get a single target. He has no targets in his last 2 games now. He's suddenly become this touchdown-dependent running back on a team that throws a ton now in the red zone with Kupp and Puka back. Bucky coming off a massive game, even a better matchup, arguably, for him this week versus the Panthers. So, yeah, I think it's Bucky over Kyren, but it's close and it doesn't feel right. But, yeah, I'm playing Pickens and Neighbors over Kyren Williams, too. Kyren or Achane, definitely Achane there. Not even really that close. Let's hop over to the running back ranks. Let me know in the comments of the YouTube Live, the TikTok Live, what rankings you guys want to see next. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get to all of the start-sit comments, but I'll get to as many as I can. How many confident, which is why it's good to know what positions you guys want to see in the ranks, because that will help with a lot of the ones I can't get to. How confident are you in Pacheco? I'm not confident at all in Pacheco in his first game back. I compared it earlier in the live when we were talking through that game. I compared it to Jonathan Brooks last week. I don't think it's quite the same. It's definitely not exactly the same, but it's similar. And the result is the same. Do not start Pacheco. Do not start Pacheco. It's a good game. It's a good matchup versus the Raiders. I don't want to start Hunt or Pacheco, though. I mean, there's such a wide range of outcomes in the role there. And the whole reason Pacheco was so good for fantasy was he was in a workhorse role on one of the better offenses in the league. I don't think that's so clear. Thankful for you, Sam. Thank you for you as well, Tad. Appreciate all of the people in the live stream right now for the first time, for the manyth time. I know, Tad, you've been in these lives many times throughout the season and past seasons too, man. So I do appreciate what you do supporting the lives and the app. Seriously, appreciate everyone who's supported the Walter Picks brand in any way. Super thankful always on this day every year. All right, Hill, Higgins, Hubbard, Marv, Bucky, or Rico, start 2 here. Man, yeah, this is not an easy start sit. A lot of guys I want to start here. Let's work through this one. Hill versus Higgins. Let's start there. I think it's T. Higgins over Tyreek Hill. Yeah, I would go T. Higgins over Tyreek. That one's pretty close. I think they're pretty comparable options, honestly, this week. I think they're both, if you're watching live on TikTok, I got T. Higgins and Tyreek, I think in the same tier. Actually, T. Higgins end of tier 2. I got Tyreek at the top of tier 4, so a couple tiers apart. So yeah, it's T. Higgins over Tyreek. Again, we haven't really seen a bad T. Higgins game. I know the matchup's tough here for T, but you're only starting 2. You might not even start Higgins. I don't think you can start Marv. I do really like Marvin Harrison Jr. this week. He ranks as wide receiver 15 ahead of Tyreek Hill. I would play Marv over Tyreek, but I don't think I'd play him over T. And then Bucky versus Hubbard. I'm a little bit nervous for Chuba Hubbard that Jonathan Brooks' role does slowly increase. Yeah, I'd go Bucky over him. So let's compare these 3. Yeah, it's T. Higgins and Bucky Irving. You can't bench Bucky against the Panthers coming off a huge game last week versus the Giants. Scored 27.2 points last week. Was the running back 3. Had 6 catches for 64 yards. He was also tackled at the 1 twice and did not get those touchdowns. One of those went to Sean Tucker. I think another one went to Baker or to Rachaad White. He did end up scoring a rushing touchdown later in the game, but he could have had 3 touchdowns in this game. It's a little concerning that he's not the primary goal line back. They're going to mix Sean Tucker in and Rachaad White in, but even in this 3-way committee in this matchup, really tough to bench Bucky. So we're going Bucky over Chuba Hubbard. We're playing Higgins over all of these guys. You can't bench T. Higgins in PPR. Leggett or Waddle? There's an interesting one. I wonder who projects better here between Leggett and Waddle. Let's check this out. I think, yeah, so Leggett projects a bit better. I think I'd probably go Waddle in this one, though. I think this is close enough. The game that Waddle's coming off, I think you could start Waddle in that one. I don't really want to start Waddle just in general, though. Tyrone Tracy or Jonnu Smith in the flex. Yeah, so I usually hate starting 2 tight ends. Man, Jonnu Smith's been so good this season. We were talking about it. They're both projected 11.6. Tracy and Smith. Jonnu Smith is the number 1 tight end in fantasy over the last month. Let that sink in, guys. I mean, crazy. I don't think he'll be the number 1 tight end over the next month, but he projects as a top 7 tight end option this week. Tracy's got a good matchup here versus the Cowboys. I think I'd play Tracy over Jonnu. You at least get some locked in touches with Tracy. I usually lean running backs in spots like this where the projections are really similar. The boom and bust probabilities for Tracy are better. The floor and ceiling is arguably better. Have a great Thanksgiving. We need the Thanksgiving food rankings. Yeah, I haven't thought through the full Thanksgiving food rankings, Kylo, but I definitely have some thoughts. I mean, I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to food, but Thanksgiving, the reason it's the best holiday is the football, obviously. But also the family, of course. And then also the food. Those 3 things, the trifecta of things for Thanksgiving. And yeah, for the food, I would say the highest floor for me at my Thanksgiving, the mac and cheese. Mac and cheese in general, just such a high floor play. I think the ceiling though, when you talk about the floor ceiling, sometimes I think the turkey is the biggest variable. And there's a lot of ways you can mitigate the risk with the turkey. But the ceiling of the turkey is massive, right? The ceiling of the turkey, if it's not dry, can be game changing for the whole meal. But the floor sometimes can be low. I think, for the turkey. So I think that's my quick food analysis there. But the gravy, the stuffing, the mashed potatoes, really high floor ceiling there too. I mean, really everything is a pretty safe option, at least at my Thanksgiving. All right, let's get to some of these start sits before we have to wrap up here. A super flex start two: Kyler, Winston, or Taysom Hill. Man, Taysom Hill has taken over the fantasy football landscape. Really, I mean, he's the top of tier 2 for tight ends. I don't know if I'd start him over Winston though, man. I mean, Winston gets a matchup versus the Broncos. I think you can't start an actual QB over Taysom. Taysom is the number 5 tight end option, though. Wow, yeah. Taysom has a better chance, a higher boom probability than Winston. But yeah, you got to go Winston over Taysom. Not a Thursday question here, though. Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Connie. Watson or Amari? Yeah, let's pull up Amari here. I don't know how to feel about Amari because we haven't really seen a full Amari game. He's been hurt. He does not project well this week at all. Bad matchup versus the 49ers. There's no Romeo Doubs this week. The ceiling here is high for Amari. But yeah, I'd go Watson. I think we see a good Jaden Reed game, but Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, they're in play. They're in play this week without Romeo Doubs. Like, that's pretty massive for both of them. Thursday, Alvin, how we doing? Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. It is the best holiday of the year, in my opinion. Oh, we got Mike Evans, McConkey, Neighbors, Mooney, or Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, very good options here. It's so tough to bench McConkey right now. I really want to start Brian Thomas Jr. this week as well. You really can't bench McConkey. Do you have Evans in here? Yeah, it's Evans and Ladd. I'm playing Evans and Ladd over Malik Neighbors, over Darnell Mooney, and over Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, I'm torn on Neighbors there too. Yeah, I really don't want to bench Neighbors. I mean, it's not comfortable feeling benching Malik Neighbors today, especially when you look back at his last game versus the Dallas Cowboys. That was like his last big game. The last big game from Malik Neighbors, guys, was back in week 4 versus this Dallas Cowboys team. He had 12 catches in that game for 115 yards. Didn't even score, and it was a top 10 wide receiver. That was the last game we saw Malik Neighbors go over 15 points, though. It's been a rough stretch for Neighbors as the Giants' entire team really crumbles before our eyes. So, yeah, there's a ceiling here for Neighbors, but there's a ceiling for these other guys, too. And I honestly think the floor is pretty significantly better for McConkey and Evans. I still think Evans is going to get to that 1,000 yards. Like, he's going to do it. He now needs over 100 yards per game to do it. But any one of these weeks, man, Evans is going to go for close to 200 yards. Then that's going to be a big storyline down the stretch. CJ or Bo Nix. Yeah, this is an interesting one here for the quarterbacks. I think it's Stroud versus the Jags. Yeah, Stroud gets the Jags. Nico Collins fully healthy. Bo Nix is up against the Browns. I think I'd go Stroud this week over Nix. I'm playing BTJ, I think, over DJ Moore. Let's do this comparison quick. I like both these guys a lot. I like the Bears passing attack a lot. I really think the Bears keep this game closer than people expect. Over 90% of the money and of the bets are on the Lions today. I mean, that's an insane percentage. The Bears are built offensively to play the Lions defense. The Lions, the only weakness for the Lions all season, on really the whole team, has been stopping wide receivers. They rank top 10 versus running backs. They rank top 10 versus quarterbacks. They rank top 10 versus tight ends. They rank bottom 5 versus receivers, though. And these are 3 of the better receivers in the league, starting with DJ Moore, I think, on this team. Keenan projects even better than Odunze, but I think all 3 of these guys are good options. But I'm not benching Brian Thomas Jr., Christian. I really don't want to bench Brian Thomas Jr. in this game versus the Texans. We've seen some massive wide receiver games versus the Texans. Brian Thomas Jr. is by far the best receiver on the Jags. Gabe Davis is out for the season now. Christian Kirk, obviously, out for the season. I mean, it's really just Brian Thomas Jr. and Evan Ingram left. And they get this matchup versus the Texans. Texans offense is going to throttle the Jaguars defense. They're going to have to throw in this game. Trevor Lawrence might play. It sounded like he might not even play again this season. Now suddenly he might play again this season. I mean, him and Purdy are kind of in similar spots in my mind. It's like, are they playing this week? Are they playing the rest of the season? I mean, both of those things are still kind of up in the air for both guys. But yeah, I think the floor is good. Over 30 points allowed to the Titans receivers last week from the Houston Texans. Over 30 points allowed to the Cowboys receivers the week before that. Almost 30 points allowed to the Lions receivers in a game where the Lions barely threw the ball. The in that game versus the Jets, that Thursday night game, over 50 points allowed to their top 2 receivers. I mean, there's a really big ceiling for BTJ this week. So yeah, I'm going BTJ over all of the Bears receivers. Dowdle or Tracy? Definitely Dowdle. It's got to be Dowdle over Tracy. I really don't think it's that close. I wouldn't be shocked to see Tracy have a good game because Tracy is a very efficient running back playing a horrible Cowboys run defense. But he only played 40% of snaps last week, and he's fumbled in back-to-back games. And the Giants' offense is awful, and their offensive line is terrible. So I'm not like sold on Tracy this week. I think he's more of a bench than a start. I'd play Tyreek over Tracy. All right, we're gonna go to TikTok subscriber only comment mode here on the TikTok live. Make sure I get to all those on this Thanksgiving. Super thankful for all of you guys. Seriously, very thankful for everyone who's tried out the Walter Picks app. That helps me out way more than you could ever realize. I've spent the last 4 years of my life helping build the Walter Picks app for you guys. Got a win week to get into the playoffs. Dimitri, we'll get to that. Tyreek, DJ, Stevenson, or Debo. Pick 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. Also, Jonnu or Ingram. Yeah, I'm going Jonnu over Ingram. And then I think I'm going with these first 2, Tyreek and DJ. And Stevenson versus Debo. Man, that one's close. The Pats get the Colts this week. Not a bad spot, but Stevenson completely flopped last week. I mean, he's got an incredibly low floor. Purdy's probably going to play. So yeah, I'm going Debo over Stevenson. So it's Tyreek, DJ, and Debo over Stevenson. And Dimitri, how are we doing, man? Holmes or Herbert? Who got the best chance? Worried about Herbert since Dobbins is out. Yeah, so I actually think Dobbins being out might be good for Herbert. I think that could lead to more pass volume for Herbert. I'm going Herbert over Mahomes. Super close one, though, for sure. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, guys. Happy Thanksgiving to all you guys. I'm super thankful for everyone. Vitter, thanks for doing the TikTok Live subscription. I'll get to all the TikTok Live subscriber comments here coming up in a second. Thursday Night Football question. Part of the year, small details matter. Of course. Cowboys defense. Can I trust them? Yeah, I would go Cowboys. I'd go Cowboys over Vikings. I don't think I put up the defense ranks yet today. But yeah, I do like the Cowboys. The Broncos, the Colts, the Lions, the Cowboys. I mean, in the games today and tomorrow, it's the Lions, the Cowboys, the Chiefs. Lions, Cowboys, Chiefs. Those are the defenses you really want right now. Aaron Jones or JSN. Yeah, so Metcalf might not play. If Metcalf does not play, I mean, you're going to want to start JSN. That's not a Thursday question, so you got some time. Right now it's Aaron Jones. But if Metcalf sits, I'd go JSN. But right now, as it stands, I'd go Aaron Jones. Swift or JMO? Oh, gosh, man. I don't want to start either of these guys, really. I'm definitely very nervous for Swift in this spot versus the Lions. The Lions have been very good versus running backs this season. They've been kind of crushed by receivers this season. I'm also nervous for Jameson Williams. I think Jameson Williams' ceiling is pretty high, though. We just saw Jordan Addison go for a 30 ball. He scored 31 points. Jordan Addison was the wide receiver 1 last week versus the Chicago Bears. 8 catches, 162, and a touchdown. They completely shut down Justin Jefferson, though. And the Bears have been very good versus receivers this season. The Bears are actually the number 1 defense versus wide receivers this season. They're allowing the fewest points per game, the fewest catches per game, the 4th fewest touchdowns per game. So I'm nervous for Jameson Williams' floor. I think the ceiling is there for JMO in this spot. And I think the floor is kind of low for Swift too. Honestly, think I would probably go Jameson Williams there over DeAndre Swift, but it's close. And Swift's definitely the safer option. We got Gus Edwards, Amari, or Pittman. Happy Thanksgiving, Sam. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Chris Stark. Yeah, I think it's between Edwards and Pittman. I'm pretty out on Amari this week. I think this is not a question that we need to answer today either, which is good. I think I'd go Pittman, though. Yeah, Pittman without Downs. He gets the Pats, too. Yeah, I would go Pittman. I have Hunt, Pacheco, Swift, JMO, and Shakir. Let me pull this up on the YouTube live here. Hunt, Pacheco, Swift, JMO, Shakir. I'm not sure who to flex. Yeah, it's not Hunt. It's not Pacheco. It's Shakir. Yeah, play Shakir over JMO. Play Shakir over Swift. Play Shakir over Pacheco and Hunt. Yeah, I think it's Shakir there. Allen, Sutton, JMO, Tyreek, Nico. Start 3. Keenan Allen, Sutton, Tyreek, Nico. Yeah, so you're starting Nico. This is a start 2. We're not benching Nico. Definitely not. I mean, let me hop over to the wide receiver tiers here. I mean, Nico is the number 1 receiver in the projections this week. I think he has a pretty good shot to be the number 1 receiver rest of season. He gets the Jags. I mean, he could go for 200 yards versus the Jags. It would not be shocking at all. So Keenan, Sutton, and Tyreek. I would bench Jameson Williams for sure here. It's start 2 between Keenan Allen Cortland Sutton, who's been absolutely balling. And then Tyreek Hill. Yeah, it's between Keenan and Sutton. You're starting Tyreek. I would start Tyreek. I know Keenan and Sutton have been better of late, like especially just looking back to the last game. Man, Sutton's been on an absolute tear since his donut. Really tough to bench him. I think you bench Keenan. I think you bench Keenan in this spot. You play Tyreek, you play Sutton. And you play Nico too. Neighbors, Sutton, Hill, Adams, Thomas Jr. Pick 3. Start 3 in the PPR. That one's definitely close. Neighbors versus Sutton. I think I'd go Neighbors there over Sutton. Yeah, I would. Devontae Adams is a really interesting one too. I think I would go Neighbors, Tyreek, and Brian Thomas Jr. Let's do Brian Thomas Jr. here. Oh, man, Sutton projects better than him too. No, he doesn't actually. Yeah, I would go Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Tyreek. I'd bench Adams. I'd bench Sutton. All good options. Even though it's snowing in Buffalo, I should play Shakir. Yeah, let's check out the weather report here. Again, Weatherman Sam had you for the game tonight too. So there's going to be some cold weather in the game tonight. I don't care really at all. Oh yeah, so this some sort of snow game. Sounds like we should pump the brakes a bit. It'll be cold. It doesn't sound like there's going to be like super significant snow. It's not a whiteout game. Yeah, I still think I'd go Shakir. Would you show your must starts? Oh yeah, let me. So this is actually just the must starts for today. Just the must starts for today I have up on the TikTok live right now. So I'll read them out if you're watching live on YouTube too. Let me pull up the wide receiver ranks here again. So the guys that I think are pretty good starts. So Mahomes is a must start in most spots. I mean, there's no buys this week, so in all leagues you don't necessarily need to start Mahomes. Tua, I think, is a good start. I actually wouldn't call him a must start. Gibbs, Monty, Dowdle, Jacobs, Achane. Feel great about all of those guys, starting all of those guys today. Amon-Ra, even though they shut down Justin Jefferson last week, you kind of have to start Amon-Ra St. Brown in this game. He was 8 straight games before last week with a touchdown. A CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Reed, I think you should feel pretty good about with Romeo Doubs out. I think Christian Watson has a pretty good ceiling too. A DJ Moore, a Dunze. I like Keenan too. I think all 3 of the Bears receivers are good starts, not must starts. I think Tyreek is a good start. Brock Bowers, Kelsey, Jonnu Smith, these are all borderline must starts. I mean, Kelsey and Bowers, they are must starts. Jonnu Smith, a borderline must start. But the Lions, Cowboys, Chiefs defenses, all great. And then the guys that I'm very scared to start today, which is maybe the easier list. You know, the must start list is tough because there's no buys this week, and it really depends who you're starting guys over. The must bench list is easier. These guys I'm absolutely terrified to start today. That includes Drew Lock, Jared Goff, Cooper Rush, Aiden O'Connell, DeAndre Swift. I'm pretty scared of. Tyrone Tracy, I think is very, very risky, playing coming off a 40% snap percentage, fumbled back-to-back games, and only ran 8 routes last week. Mostert, Jalen Wright, I want nothing to do with. Abdullah, Kareem Hunt, and Pacheco. Please don't start Kareem Hunt or Pacheco. Super risky starts. Jameson Williams, Jalen Waddle, DeAndre Hopkins. These are guys that I would prefer to bench. I think Jameson Williams has a really high ceiling, but also an incredibly low floor in this matchup. Again, we just saw Jordan Addison go for over 30 points. And then at tight end, Komet, Tucker Kraft, Theo Johnson, Shoemaker, I want really nothing to do with. Tight end rankings, please. Yeah, I got you with the tight end ranks here on the YouTube live. Would you start Keenan, Pittman, Ridley, or Mooney of DJ Moore and Hopkins? I think this one's Keenan. And I might go with Ridley / Pittman over Hopkins too. I don't think you start Mooney in this one. I think Keenan and DJ Moore playing together too is a pretty safe, high floor, high ceiling option. I think the Bears are going to have significant pass volume today. I mean, they sort of have to. Just looking at the matchup for the Bears here. Again, the Lions, they've been so good defensively against every position that isn't wide receiver. They're 3rd worst, though, versus receivers this season. Thanks for the follow, guys, on the TikTok live. Ertz or McBride? Gotta be McBride. DK, Keenan, or Judy? Yeah, that one's Keenan. I think it's Keenan over Judy. Man, Judy looked great last game in the snow game. revenge game for him this week. He actually might project better than Keenan does. God, yeah, he does. I still think I'd probably go Keenan over Judy. It's definitely close. Don't really love the matchup this week, though, for Judy. Start 3, JSN, McConkey, James Cook, Aaron Jones. Yeah, you're benching James Cook or JSN there. And you don't have to decide today. You're playing McConkey, Aaron Jones, though, almost definitely. And then if DK is out, it's probably JSN over James Cook. If not, it's probably James Cook. Hunt, Pacheco, or Swift. It's Swift. Don't play Hunt or Pacheco. I'm playing Keenan over Judy and over DK. DK might not play this week. DK Metcalf might not play. My running backs are Achane, Bijan, Kyren, and Chase Brown. Start 2. Yeah, so it's oh man. You got to start 3. You got to be able to start 3 here. Achane versus Chase Brown's close. That's a close one. It's Chase Brown over Achane. And you're not benching Bijan. So, yeah, it's Chase Brown over Achane if you have to make that call. But I don't want to make that call. I want to start all 3 of those guys. They're all top 10, all top 8 running backs. Hop over to the running back tiers here. I think they're all in the tier 1 for me. Yeah, they are all tier 1 running backs. DJ Moore, Shakir, Tracy, Waddle. Pick 2. Yes, you're playing DJ Moore for sure. Shakir, Tracy, Waddle. Man, that's close. That is not an easy start sit there. Shakir versus Tracy. I feel like Tracy might project the best here, but I don't feel good about Tracy today. Yeah, he does. Man, in a PPR league, this is a really difficult decision. Tracy projects the best, though. I think you kind of have to go Tracy in the spot versus the Cowboys. It is a good matchup for Tracy. Happy Thanksgiving, Sam. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Thursday football question. Need some help either flexing Mooney, Monty, or Taysom Hill. I want to do Monty, but the injury scares me. Yeah, the injury is definitely, cause for some concern. But I think Monty still has such a good chance at a touchdown this week. Taysom is not easy to bench right now. And then you got Mooney too, who Mooney was dealing with an injury before their bye week. I assume he's back to full health now. Yeah, it's Monty, man. You got to go Monty here. If you really want to shoot for the ceiling, you could go with Taysom, but such a good floor for Monty. He scored in basically every game. There's only 2 games he hasn't scored this season. I mean, he's number 4 in rushing touchdowns per game. This year, the Bears have not been very good defensively. They're 10-point favorites. A revenge game for Monty. You got to think they get him a touchdown today on Thanksgiving. A wonderful day for Thanksgiving today. So I think I would risk it despite the injury for Monty. I'm going Gibbs over Monty. But yeah, you start Monty and Gibbs. Yeah, start Monty and Gibbs. That's another one. Like starting the Bears receivers together, starting the Lions running backs together. I mean, high floor and ceiling way to do it if you have all those guys on the same team. Tucker, Kraft, or Taysom. It's got to be Taysom. It's got to be Taysom over Kraft. And then Waddle or Debo, man, that one's close. 2 guys that are kind of sketchy starts. We got Debo over Waddle. If Purdy plays, I think I would go Debo over Waddle. I know Waddle had a huge game last week, but it was his first game over 9 fantasy points since week 1. He's been under 9 points in all but 2 games. Jalen Waddle this season. Pick 2, Moore, Shakir, Tracy, Waddle. Yeah, I think we just got to that one. Hunt, yeah, it's Swift over Hunt and Pacheco. I would go Neighbors over DJ Moore. Neighbors over DJ Moore. Trade idea. Pacheco and McBride for London and Hawkinson. Already have CMC, Henry, and Bijan as my RB core. I don't like trading away McBride, though. I do like the idea of trading away a running back. I don't hate Hawkinson and Njoku, but I would hold on to McBride right now, man. He could easily be the tight end 1 rest of the season. I mean, his role is incredible. Flex Reed, Mooney, Pittman, Wandale, B-Rob, White, and Warren. Yeah, this one's Reed, man. Go Jaden Reed. And then for the running backs, B-Rob, White, and Warren. I don't think, is Brian Robinson playing this week? What's the latest on him? Practice Wednesday, so it seems like he could play. That's pretty big. Eckler's going to be out. He projects pretty bad right now. White has a great matchup. And then Warren, who's really coming off his best game of the season. Yeah, it's White. Go Rashad White. Go Rashad White for the running back. Go with Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed without Romeo Dobbs is a really good option this week. ETN or MVS. Oh, God, we're back with the MVS questions. MVS is just not a guy that I'm going to like if he's only getting 2 catches a game. It's ETN. It's ETN over MVS. I'm benching MVS in like 99% of spots. Herbert or Baker, so tight with the projections. Hey, I don't want to bench Baker. I really don't want to bench Baker. He's having an incredible season. He gets the Panthers. I think you got to go Baker unless you have Josh Allen, Lamar, or Hurts. I mean, then it's Baker. He's the top of tier 2 for me. Bucky or Rico off waivers. I am very in on Rico Daddle today. I don't know how you can't be in on Rico Daddle. I mean, Bucky Irving's obviously got a great matchup. The difference is Bucky Irving is in a 3-way committee. Really, it's a 2-way committee, and Sean Tucker could steal some goal line reps, just like we saw last week. The matchup's obviously great for Bucky, but the matchup's good for Rico Daddle here too, man. I mean, Rico Daddle's coming off his highest rush share of the season, and it wouldn't be shocking to see him set a new season high of rush share. He's got a really good chance to score his first rushing touchdown today. He's had at least 3 targets in 4 straight games. And the Giants just allowed 4 rushing touchdowns to the Bucs. I like Daddle more than Bucky this week. I'd probably take Bucky the rest of season, ceiling-wise. Herbert or Baker, yeah, we talked about that one. Stevenson, Tracy, or Gus Edwards. I think I would probably go Tracy over Stevenson. Adunze or Ridley. Yeah, that was super close to. Really comparable options there. I like Adunze a lot. I like the whole Bears passing attack a lot. I think it's Ridley, though. Yeah, wow, they're actually back-to-back in the ranks. They're back-to-back in the ranks. They're both projected 12.2 points in the Walter Picks app. By the way, guys, if you have not checked out the Walter Picks app yet, you got to check it out. It is the best app for fantasy insights. It is the best app for player props as well. Bobby, I got you. Devontae out for me for the flex. Adonai Mitchell, Wicks, or Elijah Moore, Singletary. Any other waiver dudes, please. Bobby, how we doing, man? Yeah, so AD Mitchell, he's in play. He's got to be in play. With Downs out, we had the Mitchell prop last week. That was the only one that missed for us last week. He was 1 yard short, 2 yards short. Despite getting 3 targets, which is way more than I would have expected, he does not project well still this week. Downs, I do think, will be out. Wicks is playable. Elijah Moore is playable too. Let's check this out. Wicks versus Elijah Moore. I think Elijah Moore projects, way better. Elijah Moore's actually been pretty consistent. Yeah, I think you go Elijah Moore here. I'm not playing Singletary. No thanks. Thanks for the gift in the TikTok live, man. Appreciate it. Zach Ertz or Laporta. Yeah, I'd go Zach Ertz there. I do like Laporta today. So let's talk through the 3 free player props today real quick before we wrap up here. I'm taking Sam Laporta over 37.5 receiving yards, Rico Daddle over half a touchdown, and Roman Dunze over 43.5 receiving yards. Those are the 3 free player props of the day. I actually didn't update the record here. We went 2 for 3 last week. Should have gone 3-0. But we're now up to 31-19. That's 63% on the season. We're going 3-0 today. 3-0 on this fantastic Thanksgiving day. Swift or Tracy? I'm going Tracy, I think, over Swift. Oh, man, I think they're actually really close here. I think Swift is actually 1 spot ahead of Tracy. Man, no, it's Tracy. It's Tracy over Swift. Taysom or Andrews? It's Taysom over Andrews. Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, DJ, JSN, standard format. Yeah, I'd go Cooper Kupp. And I think I'd go DJ Moore. Man, Devontae versus DJ Moore is close. I'd go DJ Moore. I think it's standard, especially Bucky or Connor. Not a Thursday question. I think it's Bucky, though. I'm going Tracy over Swift. I'm definitely nervous about Kyren down the stretch. The role has been great for Kyren. Just the production has not been there. The touchdowns have not been there. And the receiving role hasn't really been there either. Love the help, man. Anderson, how we doing? Moore, Pollard, Mooney, Taysom Hill. Could always start Hill over Otten, too. I would start Hill over Otten. It feels weird. And I would go these first 2. I'd go DJ Moore and Pollard. Yeah, start DJ Moore and Pollard. Swift or Hawk for flex. Man, it's not that crazy to go Hawk there, I don't think. I'd rather bench Swift if I can. Swift and Tracy, I'm pretty nervous about today. Yeah, I would go Swift still over Hawk. It's close, though. Love or Richardson? I think it's Richardson over Love. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, Ike. Tracy, Addison, Adunze, Shakir, Pittman, or Chubb? Yeah, I think it's Adunze here. I would go Adunze over Tracy, over Addison, over Shakir, over Pittman, and over Chubb. That's a good one to end on, I think. Guys, I'm super thankful for everyone in this live. Super thankful for all the followers on TikTok and YouTube, the subscribers on YouTube, all the subscribers of the Walter Picks app. Seriously, enjoy the day. Hope you guys all have a fantastic Thanksgiving. as a quick recap, I like the Bears to keep this game closer than people expect today. I think the Dolphins keep that game versus the Packers close, and I'm not concerned about the cold in that game tonight. And I think the Cowboys probably throttle the Giants. I like Rico Dowdle a decent bit today too. I would go Keenan Allen over Jawan Jennings, for example. Prop picks of the day: Sam Laporta over 37.5 receiving yards, Dowdle over half a touchdown, Adunze over 43.5 receiving yards. Guys, time is the most valuable thing we have. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Enjoy the game tomorrow between the Chiefs and the Raiders too. The Chiefs are 13-point favorites in that game. That's a lot of points for the Raiders, but the Chiefs almost definitely will win that game. We got the Kermit the Frog narrative tomorrow for the Black Friday game. Guys, have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Enjoy the football today. Good luck, everyone. We'll be back live on Sunday morning. As always, have a good one.